Welcome to the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services podcast. I'm Gail Lucas, your host. I'm also the Division Chief for the Customer Support and Outreach Division here at DPS. Listeners, we want to thank you for tuning in today, and I want to remind you that your input is important. If you have an idea or a question that you'd like to see on our podcast, please let us know. Email dps.podcast@montgomerycountymd.gov. This podcast is for you, and we want to feature the topics you want to hear about and provide you the information you are seeking. Joining me on the podcast today is two highly valuable DPS employees talking about a hot topic, particularly since it's summertime. We're going to talk about vendors. And joining me today is Jorge Ruda, who is a permit technician with DPS, and Greg Nichols, last heard talking about chickens, who is the DPS Code Enforcement Manager.
Thanks.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. First, we want to make sure our listeners know that a vendor's license is required in Montgomery County. You must have a vendor's license. In other words, it's unlawful, and this is a whole lot of information, for a person to sell, offer to sell, solicit for goods, including perishable foods, from or any other services on a public street, a sidewalk, other public right-of-way, door-to-door, in a vehicle, on foot, or from a property without a vendor's license. Unless you are a charitable organization. That's the one caveat. But that has to be defined by state law. So you'd have to demonstrate that you're a charitable organization. Also, Montgomery County does not have jurisdiction to issue a vendor's license for properties located within the city limits of Gaithersburg, Rockville, and Tacoma Park. That's a special note because we don't issue permits in Gaithersburg and Rockville, but we also do not issue vendor's permits in Tacoma Park. So, gentlemen, there's several types of vendor licenses that DPS issues, including door-to-door, regular route, sidewalk, site-specific. It's hard to say. Jorge, what can you tell us about these vendor's licenses? What general information can we know?
Sure. My name is Jorge. I'm a permit technician with the Department of Permitting Services. I've been in the department for 3 years, doing exclusively everything related to zoning and vendors licenses. So the most common applications for vendors are the regular route, the site-specific license, door-to-door, and sidewalk. This in every instance that a customer applies for a vendor's license, we need some documentation. Everything is listed in our website, but basically, is the application, driver's license, registration card, insurance card.
Okay.
And that's in general for a regular route and site specific.
Okay, let me put a pin right there. And maybe it would be helpful for our listeners if we define what some of these things are. A regular route vendor is what? Give us an example of a regular route vendor.
Vendor's license allows the applicant to drive around Montgomery County offering services, offering goods, offering any kind of food, could be perishable food. So
would that be like an ice cream truck?
Ice cream truck is considered a regular route.
Okay.
The only restriction that might have, if we can call restriction, is that they can only be for a certain time in one location. They can be for, let's say, 8 hours or 10 hours
in one
with
spot.
a regular route. They have to route. They have to drive around the county.
Okay.
Exception, as you said before, the city of Gaithersburg, Rockville, and Tacoma Park.
What about a site-specific vendor? What's that?
The big difference with the site-specific is that site-specific is located in one place the whole time. They can be open from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Sunday. There's no restriction on days. In both cases, we must have a Montgomery County Health Department inspection because, our applicants are handling food.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that, the people who's going to handle food, the facility they're going to prepare food is, approved by the health department code and regulations. So in both instances, regular route and site specific, we must have, or the applicant must have a health inspection department approved and passed.
Okay.
So that's the main requirement. So once we have the approved inspection, we will send our inspector to the site-specific license only, because we have to associate these words. Site-specific will require a site inspection. So we send an inspector for the site-specific license only. Regular route, we don't send a site inspector because, they don't have a specific place to conduct business. So that's the main difference between a regular route and a site-specific.
Okay, we're going to turn to Greg real quick. Greg, let's talk about zoning for vendors. And we've talked about a little bit about the different types, but what can you tell us about the zoning for vendors?
Well, it's a great question, and I would say that though our zoning compliance team does all of our vendor complaints as well as the site-specific inspections before they're given approval, vendors are actually in and of themselves in a chapter all by themselves, chapter 47.
Okay.
So chapter 47 kind of dovetails into chapter 59, which is our our zoning ordinance. And they use very similar languages, and it kind of discusses, chapter 47 sort of references chapter 59. But basically DPS is the authorized agency to enforce chapter 47.
Okay.
So everything we're talking about here is really not in 59, it's in 47. But our zoning team is the folks that enforce it, and it's Jorge's team that processes the applications.
Okay.
All right. So if anybody wants to know all the ins and outs and what's really all the details related to all of these licenses, they can go to our website for a lot of great information. But if they actually want to look at the regulations themselves, which they are very, very specific and very detailed, they would simply search Montgomery County, Maryland, Chapter 47 vendor, and American Legal Publishing will come up. They click on that, and that will take you to both our county code, Chapter 47, as well as COMAR, the COMAR regulations. So I just wanted to get that out. It's very important that people, if they're looking to invest, I mean, we're very pro business and very pro entrepreneurs, and we're here to help, and we answer lots of questions. We welcome when people ask us, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this," or "I'm thinking about doing that," rather than just them investing a lot of money and a lot of time, and then maybe not getting exactly what they need. But anyway.
That's a common thread through all of our podcasts is that we advise folks to please come talk to us first before you put your money down or before you sign a lease, so that you can make sure that you can do what you want to do. Yeah. What specifically does zoning get involved with? Do you review? Do you inspect? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, no, from an application standpoint, like Jorge is saying, we would be given a file once somebody applies for a site-specific license. And usually it's a food truck or it's some type of trailer that produces food. And it's proposed to be on some private commercial property.
Okay.
Within Chapter 47, there's a whole host of safety guidelines and regulations related to how far it can be away from an intersection, how close it can be to the entrance off of a roadway with a specific miles per hour. Okay. Get this. Bottom line is, what we don't want happening is people setting up something in an unsafe manner to where, we're all riding around and getting hungry, and all of a sudden, I'm going to dash in. That place is a great authentic, food. I know it. I've heard about it, and I dash in. Well, the people behind you don't know that you're doing that.
That you're dashing.
Okay, and then the people that are in these parking lots, maybe at a gas station or in a private commercial setting, don't know you're dashing in. So as inspectors, we make sure that the site plan, which is required during the application process, is adhered to and that it makes sense. That's basically what it is. It's a safety check to make sure that what they're proposing to do is in fact doable, safe, and it's going to work.
Let me ask Jorge, what is a common error people make on applications? What do you see people leaving out or putting incorrectly when they submit these applications?
The most common mistake is once they pay for the application, you say that before the customer put the money down, they should contact us first. That's a very, very good remark because, our application fees are not refundable.
Okay.
So we're very sad when the customer comes here and say, "Oh, my car didn't pass inspection, so I want my money back." It's not refundable.
Okay.
So we had to make that remark to the customer that if you don't pass, or your truck or your trailer don't pass the health inspection, unfortunately, the money is not refundable. And that's the most common mistake, is when people or customers don't come back with the application, with inspection report. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They must come back to us with inspection
health
report,
department.
with the health department
Okay.
inspection, so we can send our inspector to the site, or we can finalize our license in our system.
Okay.
So basically, health department takes care of the inside of the truck in this
The
building.
food part of it, the food handling
They make sure
part
that
of
the
it.
sink are working.
Right.
You know, they have let's say refrigeration. They have like a perfect lights, or disinfection. All the
Okay.
kind of that goes inside of the truck. Our inspector, our DP inspectors, go to the site and check the outside of the
Okay.
truck. Like Greg said, so we have to make sure that it is not blocking any right of ways. They're not blocking any crosswalks. In other words, they had to make sure that the truck is safe to operate or
Okay.
conducting business.
And the same question to you, Greg. What are some of the common things that your inspectors see when they go out to these sites?
Well, in site-specific instances, we work hand in hand with the applicant, and we really never have a problem with that. It's the people that may have vending businesses outside of the county that,
Okay.
I'm just going to go over the line. I know all about what I'm doing, and they may come from another jurisdiction.
Okay.
And they don't know our regulations. And that's the kind of thing that can get folks in trouble. They really do need a license. They need to ask and us, up front, what's required. But we see things like people aren't aware of what Chapter 47 requires. And so they want a sidewalk. They want to be a sidewalk vendor.
Okay.
Well, sidewalk vending right now, as the way the law is very strictly worded, it's defined. It's really sort of a mobile operation.
Okay.
And when it was first came out, sidewalk vending was supposed to have a push cart. If you think about like I don't want to use it, but I'd say a hot dog vendor. Okay.
Yeah.
And typically I think the notion was, how many vendors on sidewalks do we want in competition with brick and mortar stores and things like that? So there are some provisions that are there in the law that we have to work with. But a lot of people today want to just, they have art or they have goods and services, and they would like to pop up.
Right.
And there's a problem with that, because even if they apply for a pop-up type operation on a sidewalk, we're not going to approve that. And then they think that it takes a long time to get a license. It's not. It's just illegal. So there is a lot of discussion within our customer base, as well as people that are already involved in the government that are there to help communities, talking about maybe modifying the regulations a little bit to include some of these new, more innovative ways of vending. But there's going to be like sidewalks we have to keep open because there's American Disabilities Act requirements. There's, ADA requirements. We can't just block off, sidewalks and things like that.
One of the things that you said that I want to get back to and make sure that we emphasize are folks coming from other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I know in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
and in many neighborhoods, we get the college kids coming around selling magazines or selling phone service or selling, driveway repaving services. Right. Those folks are required to have vendor's license, correct?
Correct. And it should be displayed prominently. Usually a company will come in, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a company will come in and apply for their task for, or their workforce in groups. Rather than just one individual here or there. They'll, every year they'll hire 10 folks to do that kind of work, college kids or whatever. Right. And they'll all come in all basically at the same time and get their licenses.
And Jorge, we issue picture licenses, don't we? So folks should look for a badge or something that has that person's picture, yes?
Yeah, that is correct. We issue an ID card for each applicant who apply for a vendor. One important thing about the license that Greg was mentioning is about the door-to-door vendor's license.
Okay.
A door-to-door vendor's license is like, when any applicant is allowed to go to the county knocking doors, offering any kind of services. Could be, food, could be disinfectants, could be pesticides,
right,
internet services,
right,
a lot of multiple services that can be offered door to door. And we issue those licenses as well. They are considered vendors as well.
okay,
What they need to have is, the sponsorship from a company. So the company will need to
so
have.
we need to know who that parent company is,
We
right?
need verification of employment, making sure that this individual is working for the company.
Okay.
And the other thing that we need is, ID documentation in case, like you were saying about these college kids that have like a season jobs knocking doors. Not necessarily, they don't have to be a Maryland resident or county residents.
Mm-hmm.
We have folks that coming from out of state applying for a door-to-door vendor's license. So the good thing is, one license can include up to 5 members of the same company. So they don't have to apply for individual licenses.
Okay.
They can apply for one primary applicant, and they can have up to 5 secondary applicants covered under the same license number.
But each one of those each one of those employees must have an ID that's a picture ID that we issue them.
That we issue. So and they must pay the fee that is required, and we finalize. In that case, we don't require a health inspection because it's not needed. They're just going to knock in doors. Right. But for door-to-doors, a very important thing is if they see a non-trespassing door or non-solicitation sign, they can go inside or unless they are authorized by the property owner. Okay.
So we've talked a whole lot about vendors and given a whole lot of information. I don't want to belabor it because we could talk about it all afternoon long. But as we wrap up, what are 3 things we want vendors to know? What 3 things do we want folks that may be considering doing this or that encounter vendors? What 3 things do we want them to know? Jorge, I'm going to give you first shot. What one thing do you want folks to know about applying the application process?
Yeah, one thing that for me, because I've been dealing with customers, live customers for the phone, is that when they apply for the health department inspection, they are provided with an ID from the health department, which authorize the individual to handle food.
Okay.
So if they have like 5 applicants in the same license, only one can have the food handling managing ID. Okay. Because the idea is that the individual that's holding the license or the ID for the food handling manager, they can train the people who's working under his directions.
Okay.
So that would be one thing that.
Greg, what about you? What one important thing do we want folks to know about where they set up or how they go door to door?
I would say that, like Jorge said, if a property is posted a no trespassing or no solicitation, they really have got to stay away from that. They don't want to jeopardize their license. People are not allowed to just sell things out of their car. It's not safe being along the roadside. Like Jorge said, the regular route trucks are not supposed to stay there, for any length of time. They're allowed to be there as long as they have customers.
Sure.
And they communicate with their customer base using multimedia, social media.
Right.
Sorry. And that works. I'm going to be here at this time, and they park right outside, and bang, they've got all their customers. But then once the customers dwindle and are going away, they have to move on regular route. I would say the number one thing is safety, and please, come talk to us about your ideas, because we are very proactive and very supportive of the small businesses and entrepreneurs. We want to help them get legal, stay legal. And that way we can defend them. If we ever get questions or calls about somebody's operation, I love defending somebody who went through the right process and did everything right. And it makes my day to be able to defend them. So that's the number one thing.
And I will kick in one: plan early.
Oh yeah.
Folks need to, don't go buy your truck tomorrow and come the next day to get license from us. Plan it out. Give us time to make sure that you are doing it legally. Yeah. Because we do want you to vend. We do want these kinds of businesses, but we want you to do it legally. Anything else, guys, that we need to talk about or that our listeners need to hear?
I would just say one other thing. There is another license that if people, because a lot of people now are growing a lot of vegetables in the gardens and things like that.
Sure.
So there is a certified producer's license that people can obtain, and they need to coordinate that first and foremost with the Office of Agriculture, and then that gives them, it's sort of like a produce stand.
Okay.
If you want to think about it that way. Yeah. And so that's a different license, but it's important to know that that's regulated as well. There's a process for that. So they reach out to Office of Ag, get their advice, and then again, call us and get our advice and then move forward.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
For joining us on the podcast. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please check out the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services website at montgomerycountymd.gov/DPS to find information and resources to help you with your next project. Remember, we're here to help you, our customers, succeed. It's important to know when to get a permit or when to get a license and why you need a permit or why you need a license. If you have any questions about the permitting process, you can reach out to our customer support team by calling 311 or 240-777-0311. Or you can always stop by our offices at 2425 Reedy Drive. We're on the 7th floor. We're open Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. And we do have folks in the office that you can talk with, get your questions answered right then, or begin your application process. You don't need an appointment. You can walk in. Do you have an idea or a question for an upcoming podcast? As we mentioned at the top of the show, we want to hear from you. Email your ideas and questions to dps.podcast@montgomerycountymd.gov. And if you found this podcast helpful, we hope you did. Please share it with others and subscribe so you can get our latest episodes. Until our next podcast, I'm Gail Lucas. Remember, DPS is your project partner.